Hi everyone, my name is Valeri and I'm a researcher and XR design ethicist. And today I'll speak to you about ethics in XR and introduce our initiative, the Ethical Framework for XR. Before moving ahead, I would like to thank Stereopsia for the opportunity to be here this year. Even though it's an unusual format for us all, it's such a great pleasure to be learning new things and connecting with other industry experts. So thank you for organizing this. And I would like to start with looking at some of the definitions, the essential definition being that of ethics. What is ethics? If we go back to the origins, in classical philosophy, ethics is the study of what is morally right and wrong. And I've included this picture here to suggest that actually the birthplace of Western ethics was the ancient Greece. And while the ancient Greek legacy is definitely still very important to us and very precious in terms of the insights that it can provide to us for conducting our life and conducting work, the world has changed quite a lot since that historical period. We have become a lot more globalized, interconnected, not to mention technologically advanced, and also growingly polarized. So I think in this new context, we need to be very careful when classifying things as right and wrong, particularly in the context of new technologies, which are, by their very nature, uncertain. So instead, I suggest what we borrow from the Greeks is first and foremost their ability to conduct democratic discussions about issues that are difficult or don't have a very simple yes or no, black and white answer to them. And adopt this habit of collective deliberation. In this context, then, ethics in XR becomes essentially an invitation to explore, like a mental framework, the way of thinking about XR in a critical manner to anticipate dangers and maximize benefits of immersive worlds. But the field of ethics is very big, and it is often or can be stigmatized because of how abstract it feels and so removed from our day-to-day life and our work. And I meet a lot of people in the industry who have the goodwill to already adapt their commercial activities to the more ethical standards, but they don't really know how to approach it and how to make it more tangible. And so this is where someone like me, a design ethicist, comes in. My job is essentially to provide organizations with the knowledge and tools that they need to make informed decisions about ethics in a way that it aligns with their culture. It helps them to improve their immersive product, but also to preserve the integrity and health of the user in the long run. So after introducing myself, I would like to dive into the content of the presentation. And here, before we actually look at the ethical challenges that I've mapped out for you, I would like to first give you a quick insight into the functioning of the human brain. Why? Because I think that it is only by understanding how our operating system works that we start to see and anticipate a little bit what and how can go wrong when it comes to our interactions with the XR technologies. And so for a long time, it was believed that the human brain becomes fully formed in our mid-20s. But now we have ample evidence from neuroscience and psychology suggesting that actually the brain remains in constant formation throughout our lifetime. And in technical jargon, this is known as brain plasticity, and it refers to this incredible flexibility of the brain and its ability to fully adapt to its environment and its context, to the point where even our genes become altered in the process, and these new genes can get passed on to new generation and condition the way they think and interact with others. And the media, of which XR technologies are becoming an increasingly part of, have always played a huge role in influencing, in shaping that context and in turn influencing how we are. And Nicholas Carr is one of my favorite experts to bring into this discussion. He wrote a brilliant book called The Shallows: How the Internet is Changing the Way We Think, Read, and Remember, where he basically explains that the technologies we use, they can literally reroute our neural pathways. And that argument is particularly true for the internet and the digital technologies that have now become basically a part of our daily life, which we didn't have to the same extent with the media like the TV or the press before. And so these media are reshaping who they are And what makes this context very complicated for us as human beings is the fact that the technology that we've created are basically a lot more advanced in terms of their processing power and speed than the brains. So Tristan Harris, commonly in his talks and articles, he brings up this idea that our brains are no match for our technology, because even though our brains are remarkable in many ways and they can process information and basically monitor our body budget in the most fascinating ways, they have not really evolved much on a structural basis throughout the centuries of human history, while the technologies are growing at an exponential rate and becoming more advanced with every passing second. So that basically means that our context is becoming incredibly challenging for us, complex to digest, complex to process, we feel overwhelmed and increasingly become more and more vulnerable and to a large extent unpredictable in the long run. And XR technologies come into this whole discussion because for the first time in human history, particularly when it comes to VR technologies, we have created a medium that actually enables us to fully merge with the medium itself. So we can expect the impact on human psychology to be incredibly big. And we're already seeing evidence to that, as I'm about to share with you in this presentation. And so you may be wondering at this point, but does that mean that this is a bad development? Are we all doomed? And the answer is that it will be both good and bad, the immersive tech revolution. And the metaphor that I like to use here is the Faustian Bargain. So Faust is a protagonist of a classical German legend who traded his soul to the devil in exchange for unlimited knowledge and worldly pleasures. And the Faustian Bargain then essentially expresses this idea of a trade-off where in exchange for something that we desire, we trade something that is super essential. And in case of XR technologies, we're already seeing that they're giving us so many benefits in terms of social aspects, in terms of therapy, in terms of entertainment, and it's only going to get better and better in terms of their benefits. But at the same time, I'm afraid to say that there will certainly be a price to pay for living in virtual worlds and getting all of these benefits that they're already generating and about to generate for us in the near future. And to start to understand what this price is like, we can now have a look at the ethical challenges that I've mapped out for you for our talk. And the way I organized those is in three groups that reflect the different relations that compile human existence. So the first one is being our relationship with ourselves, second one with our social circle, and a third one, which is particular to digitalized society, is our relationship with the big brother, which is a term I picked for, I think, obvious reasons to refer to the platform host. And so this classification here serves to show that the immersive technologies are basically entering all layers of our existence and meddling with very existential aspects of it. And so to introduce the part where I talk about our relationship with ourselves, I would like to share this short clip with you that is taken from a wider screen documentary, a brilliant documentary that was filmed entirely in VRChat. Because this extract really, I think, serves to show the point that I'm about to make. Just give me a second. Yes.
Okay, so definitely it's over 2 years, maybe 2.5.
Yeah.
We've known each other longer than we've had our headsets, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not transgender or anything, but I've certainly become very comfortable with identifying as a female. I don't know if I'd ever consider myself transgender or anything, but I do know that if tomorrow someone came up to me and said, I have invented a pill, it will turn you into a woman overnight, I'd be like, I could do that happily. If that sounds the same, if that is right. I'm much more in touch with the state of myself I wasn't aware of before VRChat.
Yeah, you pick.
Okay. So what is interesting about this clip? This clip is essentially showing that people who spend enough time in VR start identifying with their avatar to the point where even their identity, like their core identity, start becoming altered in the process. And in the field of VR in particular, we've seen a lot of empirical evidence showing that actually Indeed, changes in behavior and personality in users are observed long after their return to the real world. And if we think about it, it makes perfect sense, of course. Being in an avatar is like being in a role. And the more we are in that role, the more that role becomes us. But I think it can be interesting to see to what extent that actually happens. And the changes in personality and behavior can be both positive and negative, to go back to the Faustian Bargain metaphor. And so on the positive spectrum, we see that people through their, through the avatars that they embody, they become wiser with retirement savings. They start being more attentive and altruistic towards other people, more confident in their self-image, and even we may observe a decrease in racial bias as a result of embodying colored avatars, for instance. But on the negative side, of course, we also have to be careful, because we have a lot of evidence already from psychology showing that under certain conditions, humans may completely forget who they really are and start exhibiting, pathological violence or being in moral disorders, doing things. And a lot of these experiments have been recreated in VR to show that indeed that can be very dangerous if the wrong kind of content is encouraging the wrong kind of personality development. And so we see that, experiences enabled through immersive worlds start to reshape the very identity of the users, and that presents the industry with certain urgent questions, such as how can we maximize self-expression through avatar creation while minimizing harm, and to what extent is behavioral nudging acceptable or even desirable? Moving on to the social aspects, here too we will observe important changes as a result of the immersive tech revolution. And so one of the more interesting developments that we're observing right now is this convergence of VR and social media. And a lot of experts are already saying that that will introduce new forms of everyday social interactions, the way social media did. And the fact that, Facebook with Horizon is entering that field is particularly symbolic, and actually suggests that indeed, everything might change. And while we do not necessarily know what kind of form these new social interactions will take, we're already observing some phenomena that are particular to the immersive media. So on the positive side, users are reporting exciting social possibilities, and they're saying that it's, it's amazing to be able to hang out with your friends in different universes, and that's so much better than the real life. And others are able to connect with other users, on the basis of things that just go beyond physical appearance, which in real life may sometimes prevent people from actually forming connections, but to bond on this deeper level. But the flip side of all of this is that this may aggravate social isolation, the way gaming already does, with people completely giving up on their real life connections, as well as even their bodies. And I think that might also aggravate the gap between generations, with younger people valuing these social interactions that their parents cannot understand and relate to, and vice versa. Then another interesting aspect here is that, and then we need to be careful with, is that the fictional nature of avatars, the fact that they sometimes don't look real at all, and that everything is anonymized while we are in VR social platforms, is the fact that it leads to some undesirable behaviors, and harassment is becoming an increasingly big problem. In a study conducted in 2018 with over 600 users, almost 50% of women reported being subject to some form of harassment in VR, because people feel more daring and more willing to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do if they were confronted with a physical person. So here's, well, difficult questions, because if experiences enabled through immersive worlds can reshape the social fabric of our society, then what kinds of behaviors should we tolerate in VR worlds? Should we be censoring? How will a virtual relationship coexist with the real ones? And should users be actively encouraged to unplug from extensive immersion? These are all pressing questions for the industry once again. Finally, let's talk about the Big Brother and our relationship with the Big Brother. So here my claim is that tech platforms will get even more powerful thanks to XR technologies. Why? Well, we already know that the GAFA have built their entire business model on collecting, processing, and trading our data And they're already extremely advanced in sense of what they can know about us while we interact on their platforms and while we operate on their platforms. And so, for instance, from the Facebook likes alone, they're already able to guess what kind of ethnicity we have, what is our religious affiliation, our sexual preferences, and so forth. So the information that is, quite intimate. And XR technologies, because they have so many sensors and because they can give insight into our bodies, like VR, or into our homes, like VR and AR, they are basically able to provide even more data that is even more intimate, and that actually, as a recent experiment at Stanford conducted by Mike Miller and his colleagues showed, this new kind of data that they generate will be even more difficult to de-identify from a user, which basically means that it will become more difficult for us to remain anonymous while we are in virtual worlds than it is already today through just our internet presence. And so big data is not going anywhere, and we need to accept that. What needs to change, though, is, of course, well, first of all, the lawmakers' attention that's being accorded to this, as well as the issue of informed consent. So we as an industry have a big say in defining to what extent the users are actually notified on what's really going on, and removing these information symmetries that currently exist with people, not being able to understand what's actually happening and what their data is being used for. And so if surrendering data is an essential precondition for mass users to enjoy immersive worlds, to what extent should we allow users to, opt out of platforms as opposed to opting in, and how do we best inform them? What data should we be collecting to begin with, and for how long, and how do we preserve the people's sacred right to remain anonymous even in virtual worlds? So in a nutshell, what we've seen until now with the last couple of slides is that VR and AR as well are essentially existential technologies. They give us the ability to rethink every aspect of human existence, and that means that the creators of virtual worlds are essentially acquiring godlike powers over their users. And that, in my opinion, invites a certain sense of responsibility that we as an industry should be exercising. And so to help organizations understand what that responsibility means and move forward, we're launching the ethical framework for XR, which will become a network for industry actors that are united in a common goal, that of engaging in an informed and long-term debate and dialogue around ethical issues in XR to build a meta immersive future. And so the way we define responsibility under this framework is essentially on 4 principles. The first one is being procedural fairness, which means that instead of focusing on do's and don'ts, as I explained in the beginning of the presentations, we try to elaborate on methodologies and tools that will enable companies to arrive at their definition of responsibility and improve their products and services in the process. Secondly, inclusivity. We really want to encourage companies to engage in cross-fertilization, to invite experts from other fields, to invite academics to broaden their horizons and have a more informed discussion in order to anticipate risks and minimize dangers. The third part is proactiveness. So instead of waiting for the lawmaker to come and mandate the course of action, they suggest that we take the initiative and lead by example as the one tech industry that actually understands the importance of ethics and acts accordingly. And the fourth part is durability. So instead of treating ethics as a, one-time, one-size-fits-all solution, we engage in a continuous ethical inquiry and treat this as an ongoing commitment. So to help organizations get there, and to respect responsibility that is based on these 4 principles, we have designed 3 pillars, some of which are based more on theory, others on practice. So the research and publication part is where we will conduct multidisciplinary research to outline what are the main challenges and propose some recommendations that will result in publications, so white papers, guidelines and reports, some of which will be aimed at the industry at large, while others are created for specific stakeholder groups in order to help them in their day-to-day work, such as, developers, designers, and so forth. In this way, ensuring that the responsibility spreads across the entire value chain in the industry. The second pillar is inspired by the Greek forum practice and is focused on events, on bringing the different stakeholders together to discuss the issues in order to move forward together as a collective force. And finally, the third pillar, training programs, where we design tools and methodologies that, through workshops, seminars, and ad hoc ethical committees, we're able to implement certain changes on the level of organizations. So to conclude, ethics are ideals, and we will fall short of them, as Diane Hosfeld has put it. But I believe that as long as we all assume our shared responsibility and continue to work towards these goals and ideals as a collective, we will create a better immersive future for all. So thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to answer all of your questions, and feel free to reach out to me via email or on LinkedIn if you have any specific concerns on the level of your organization or on individual level. I'll be very happy to discuss and consult you. Thank you very much.